mean, you should have seen it. I had never heard that theology before. Right. So he just preached out of Matthew 6, and he just went on and on and on. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait, what? It's like, is this really what the Bible says? 20 years at this point in church, probably, I don't know, like 700-800 sermons in, and never had heard this type of theology. And it made me like hunger to learn more. And then that was it. It's like it's like the things that you do make a difference in your eternity. And if you don't think that, if you just said like, oh well, I'm already saved, it's just kind of like this, it doesn't matter, then is it any wonder that lots of Christians are perfectly content to be passive, right? It's like, if eternal life is just life in eternity, it's not especially exciting. There's no change, right, or expectation that it will be different based on like how I live my life here. Then why are we surprised when nobody puts in the extra effort, right?
So that's a big motivator for you, Kinsen, the eternal rewards paradigm.
Huge.
That's awesome. That's so interesting.
Right.
It's so interesting.
It's going to impact how I live my life. It's going to impact how I give, right? It's going to impact like everything.
So cool. Yeah. Because I'm thinking about Sean, and he would say intimacy. Like, what motivates me is the desire for intimacy. I think that's what he would say. You know how he was sharing? Like, I can imagine it, like God brings us and draws us in different ways, and eternal rewards, just so right. Like, most of us can't quite use that as a motivator. It's so distant. But it's, you're one of those, that probably one of the few people I've met that go, I get it. I so get that. It's a real motivator.
They go hand in hand.
Spending time with you on that,
Danny. They go hand in hand. You can have a hope in eternal rewards, right, without intimacy, right? It's like you don't know what the balance is, right? You don't know what kind of difference it's making. Like, you have to walk, and it's like when you write this check, when you do this service, when you do something that you don't frankly want to do because you're like tired, right? If you want to say something to someone, or I'm sorry, I should say, you don't want to say something to someone, right? You don't want to express your faith, and against your own fear, you share, right? Because that requires intimacy. They are not opposed, right? I would say that
they're not opposed. They're not opposed. No way. No.
They're absolutely not opposed. Like, they feed on each other.
No, they do. Right. But so for example, for me, Kinsen, say for example the idea of good and faithful servant Danny, that motivator, or obviously riches stored up in heaven, which we're not going to be overly materialistic about. I don't really think many of us are thinking about. We often joke about the size of the house, depending on how godly someone is. Like, they're going to end up with some huge mansion, and the party will be at their house, because God's just going to give them the big one, But that's sort of, for me, that's not necessarily those kind of verses which are there aren't my drivers. Whereas maybe I'm thinking, oh, I just did that. I reckon that pleased God. I reckon right there, He was happy with me, or I pleased Him. Do you know what I mean? So everyone's going to have this different type of whatever that is that motivates you. And I'm saying I think you're very interesting, because I'd love to actually double click on that, because I reckon the reward thing is it's so missed by all of us. We should talk to you about that in detail at some point. Give it to Adrian from AIDS. Do you want to have a chat about anything, buddy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, no, thanks, Kinsen. I really love that. I mean, I think for me, motivation is one of the big things, in terms of what drives us. There's a lot of things which I think often we actually don't know what motivates us. I think for a long time I thought I was motivated to serve God, but then, you realize it's actually a lot of things which, like, expectations that you put on, or you think that people have of you, that actually are ultimately really driving you. And that's a journey of life. Like, it's actually trying to work that out. And I think for me, I have a slight, probably the other side of the coin of, the eternal rewards. Like, I'm driven more by the motivation of wanting to understanding what God's heart is for the world, and wanting to play my part in that, to help God's, heart, God's vision for the world, to see, people come to know him, like, I think, and have
Awesome.
transformation
Yep.
of the world, like, I think, and I think, as we sort of, just conclude here, I think one of the things which come to mind is, I mean, just to make it clear what we're not saying, I think, is that, you know, service in the church is not good. I think that's needed, and it's important, and there's definitely people who are called to that and have a great, contribution, and are making amazing impact. I think
Amen.
what we are saying is that, there's people who may not actually be called to that, and that could be, and signs, and whether you realize that or not, there could be, little things where, oh, I'm kind of not really, that passionate. I feel like I don't have purpose, or, so it's when you don't feel like there's something a little bit missing in terms of, having purpose as a believer, then, my challenge would be, think about what, a bit like what Sean was saying, look at what the word says, but try and identify what are traditions, what is, versus what the word says, and, and just take steps forward. Like, I think it's, the idea of, you can't just work it out, theologically. There's theology and practice is very different. And, there's things which, for many, many years, I just thought, hey, I know what the theory of the theology looks like, but then, when you actually walk it, you start to realize it's not black and white. So you need to actually, see how that actually plays out, and God can't guide a stationary ship. Like, if you're a ship, just turning the wheel, it's not going to go anywhere. Like, I think we need to keep moving forward.
I want to ask you another question based on that. The other side of it, Aids. I want to ask you this: what would your encouragement be to church leaders and church pastors, which often set the agenda, set the tone of things, set the things they talk about, the events that they hold, how they hold them, the encouragement they give? Do you know what I mean? Would you have any encouragement for them, for those that set the agenda? The pastors and the leaders out there.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of church leaders, and I think the common thing that, in conversations with those leaders would be, that I think every single one of them believe this same thing, right? That's what they want. They want their congregation to be out there. They want people to be living Christian lives every day. They want everyone to see their lives as, a full-time, them being in full-time ministry, if you want to call it that, and so I think that it's just a matter of, again, coming back to traditions, or, processes. Like, sometimes, a process starts with a great intention, but then, we just need to reevaluate at different times, because they might start with a great intention, but then, they've served their purpose, but then we still do it, and I think that, some of the activities that we do, even say with the examples that we shared about when we have mission days or whatever it is, like, and we just get the missionaries up, and, those in the traditional ministry type activities, that's just what's typically been done, and I think it's not deliberate. I think it's just more, hey, look, as a leader, take the opportunity to, ask the question of, why do we do this activity, and, what are we trying to achieve from it? And, be open to actually doing things differently, and recognizing, and I guess putting forward people who, in terms of what ministry is, are serving in different contexts, in different ways.
That's awesome. I love it, mate. Yeah, there's just so many places we can go from there. I'm conscious of time for us though. And next week we're going to be talking about, which is another big, it's kind of all kind of related, but just I think the being intentional and how we be intentional. And again, Age, I reckon you've got some great questions around that you and I were talking about the other time, which we can talk about next week. Age and Kinsen, it's been awesome, and Deb and Sean, special guest. Thank you guys. Let's end this here, and we'll take it up again next week.
All right.
All right.
Take care, guys.
See you guys
Bye.
next week.
Bye.
Bye.